So, welcome everybody. It is our 18th UP Energy Task Force meeting and our first one of 2021. So for those of you who might be joining us as public attending, I'm Lisa Clark. I'm the Director of Michigan's Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy. Thanks for being here. I gotta say, this group knows I have a deep affinity for all of you because I feel like we've been toiling together for quite some time, and I am continued to be so impressed by the dialogues that we've been having and the progress that we've been making on this really important topic. So I appreciate the time and commitment that you all are putting into it. We are starting to come to the end, so we'll talk a little bit more about that here as we work our way through the agenda. So why don't we start off first by doing roll call? Hopefully I've talked for a couple of minutes and given folks a chance to get on. So I'm going to read through our list of task force members. And I'm going to ask you to let me know that you're here. And then given the changes to Open Meetings Act, I'm also going to ask you where you're joining us from. So we'll start with our officers. So Mike Prusi, are you on?
Yes, I am. I'm joining you from the frozen shores of Cooper Lake in Ishpeming Township here in Michigan's glorious Upper Peninsula.
Awesome. Great to hear your voice. All right. Tanya Pezlowski.
Tanya Pezlowski, joining from East Lansing, Michigan, and I don't have anything nearly that wonderful to say about the landscape, sadly.
Well, we were happy to see the sun down here briefly on Saturday, and other than that, it's been a lot of days since we've seen the sun. So, Chris Bowman, I think I see you on phone. Are you with us, Chris? I see him. He's here.
You hear me now?
Yes, you sound great.
Yeah, here, Gulliver, Michigan.
Great. Thank you, sir. Dave Camps.
I'm here from Hancock, Michigan.
Wonderful. Mike Fermansky.
Here from Escanaba.
Thank you, Mike. Jen Hill.
I am here in South Marquette, where we are still harvesting kale and chard from our garden.
Oh.
Yeah. Crazy warm.
Weird weather. I think I saw Douglas Jester.
Yes, good morning. This is Douglas Jester, calling in from East Lansing.
One of these days, Douglas is going to say, I'm calling in from Northport. I wait for that day.
Me too.
Aaron Johnson.
Good morning, Director. Calling here from Negaunee, Michigan.
Great. Thanks for joining us, Aaron. All right. Jim Kuchever.
I am here from Ishpeming, Michigan.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Michael Larson.
I'm here, Marquette.
Wonderful. Nice to see you, Michael. Mike Nystrom. Mike Nystrom, are you with us? You might be on mute. All right, we'll check back for Mike later. I know that he's often on phone. I'm not seeing him yet, though. Okay, Tony. I saw Tony. There's Tony.
Yes, good morning. I'm calling from beautiful downtown Marquette, Michigan.
Wonderful. Nice to see you, Tony.
Thank you.
All right. General Rogers.
Good morning. I'm calling from Farmington Hills.
Good morning. Nice to see you, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
Dan Scripps, Mr. Chair.
I am here, and unlike Douglas, I am calling in from beautiful Northport, Michigan.
Excellent. Roman. I think I heard Roman.
Good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. Calling from Portage Township, Michigan.
Is that your landscape behind you, Roman?
That's my landscape last year. So the only difference between this, well, there's a bit less snow, and now we converted the pond into a skating rink.
Ooh, lovely.
So currently the Blackhawks are winning every game.
Sounds great. Chris Schwartz. Chris, are you with us? All right. And Tanya Sweener. I think I see you.
Yes, like Jen, I'm in South Marquette.
Wonderful. We got a Marquette contingent today. All right, thanks everybody. Appreciate it. Also appreciate that you've got ability to turn cameras on. I think that's going to be really helpful as we work through this deliberation component of the work that we're doing here today. So I will say before I ask you to review the agenda, my apologies for getting you stuff on Friday. I hope you had a chance to at least skim through it. I think public sector, Eric and Julie did a wonderful job of consolidating materials from our last conversation. And of course, we're working through compiling and getting us towards a shared set of recommendations. So really appreciate your thinking on all this. I think they captured well, certainly what I heard in that meeting. I suspect you see a lot of consistencies there, and we'll have a chance to talk today about anything you might see that doesn't feel like it's representative, and then where we're all going together. So you've got an agenda in front of you that came on the 5th. So I will ask for a motion to approve the agenda for today.
Rataski, I'll make a motion. We approve the agenda.
Thank you, Tony. Second.
Support, Coach Cheever.
Great. Any discussion on today's agenda? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. And then I'd also like to do a little bit more business and make sure that we have our meeting minutes from the December 15th meeting approved. So do I have a motion on those December 15th meeting minutes?
So moved, Mike Nystrom.
Thank you. Hi, Mike.
Hi.
Can you tell me where you're calling in from so we can note it in the agenda or in the notes?
Mida World headquarters in Okemos, Michigan.
Thank you, sir. And did I see the chairman giving me a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dan. All right. Any discussion on the December 15th meeting minutes? Anything you noticed? Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right.
Any opposition? All right, thank you. So before we get started in our task force work session, I'm just going to remind folks that might be joining us to listen to the deliberation of the task force that this session is for discussion amongst the task force members. So I'm going to hand it over to public sector consultants to take us through what was shared on Friday and then work us towards consolidating recommendations. So this time is for task force members to talk. It's not a public opportunity here. We do have public comment at the end of our session today. So you can send an email now to our email box, which is eagle-upenergy@michigan.gov. Or you can just hold out and speak up then, raise your hand then. So we'll get to that at about 11:25. And at about 11. So anyone who joins us, we'll hope to get you 3 minutes. If you have more that you want to share, you're always welcome to send us an email, which we will make sure gets to the entire task force so that everyone has an opportunity to see that and review that. And we will have more public, we do public comment every session. We'll do more public comment coming up. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Eric and Julie to take us forward from there. So hand it off to you guys. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you, Director Clark, and it's great to see everybody again. Happy holidays, Happy New Year. Hope you had got to spend a little time with family and friends doing what's important to you over the break. So what I'm going to talk about today is I'm just going to give you a preview of what we're going to do together for the next little bit. I'm going to start off by recapping what we did at the last meeting because it has a lot gone on between then and now. And so I just want to bring you up to speed and remind you. Also talk about the work that we did, meaning Eric and what Eric and I did during the break to help move us along and make sure that you're grounded in what we did and make sure you agree with what we did. It was just meant to make good use of your time and move us forward in the conversation, but we want to take a break and make sure that you're okay with that work. And then we're going to move into an activity where we're going to try to winnow down the 100 ideas that you all generated during our exercise at the last meeting and winnow that down because we know that there's varying levels of priority in those. And if we have so many recommendations, we're worried that it'll lessen the impact of your work. And so we're going to go through a recommendation or an exercise of winnowing those down and prioritizing those. So just to recap what we did at the last meeting, I'm going to bring up the board because a visual can always help. Let me see here. Share. There we go. Okay. And so can someone verbally verify that you can see that board?
We can.
Yes.
It's small, but.
Yeah. So hopefully you'll remember this, that you all came up with actions that are needed to address the energy needs in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. And we went through an exercise of bringing those up and then grouping those that were similar to create these categories, all in an exercise of identifying kind of buckets or themes for recommendations. And then we assigned 1 or 2 words that were like tags that kind of summarized what was within the theme. And so you can see here that we had rate design, renewables, supply chain, community engagement, increased EWR, we had a cross-cutting group, heating, economic development, and planning. And so there were 9 themes identified. And on the board, if I were to scroll down and down and down, you'll see that we went through about 50 of those ideas during the meeting. And before the meeting and since the meeting, there were more ideas generated. I'm going to stop sharing because the whole point of this was just to help you see and get a visual on that. So, so since that meeting, I'm going to turn it over to Eric to have him explain, because he really rolled his sleeves up and worked to look at these buckets, flesh out the names of the buckets into kind of thoughtful sentences, and did a little bit of reorganization. So Eric, why don't I turn it over to you and you can help the task force understand what you did, and then we can talk about if you're in agreement with that or not, task force. Go ahead, Eric.
Great. I've got the document that we shared with you all on Friday pulled up. Can I get a confirmation that everyone can see it?
I can see it.
Great. So this was, the process of refining the recommendations really was threefold. And first, we wanted to amplify and provide some clarifying language around the issue areas that were identified during that group session. And the other part, the second part, was to really combine and group other ideas that the group had come up with that didn't get time during the discussion at our last meeting. And so they were either submitted through the survey or they'd been verbally expressed and I'd been capturing through notes. So wanted to make sure all of those were represented. And then the final task was to really refine and eliminate duplicates and make sure ideas were truly clarified so that we could start to reduce the number of recommended actions to something that was a little bit more manageable. So what I want to focus on first with this group was our choice of renaming these issue areas, and then the areas where we provided 2 new issue areas that sort of represented themes that I don't think were captured other than in the proposed recommended actions versus having its own issue area around it, and then also where we combined other original issue areas with previous other categories to maybe condense the overall number. I will make one comment. We did opt to combine the cross-cutting issues with the into the other issue areas. The decision behind that was not to dismiss the cross-cutting nature of many of these topics, more so to help to sort of amplify that all of these issues are to some degree cross-cutting, because we're talking about energy issues that impact all of the Upper Peninsula. And so we don't want to lose sight of that. And we think that we can appropriately capture the cross-cutting nature of many of these as we write the report and develop the recommendations into a similar format to what you saw from phase 1. But I did want to call that out since I know that was a topic of discussion. So I want to pause before we go any further and get reaction and feedback from the group on the proposed issue areas that we've got pulled up on the screen. This is our opportunity to change if we need to, but I think largely we're hoping that these have captured the work that you think is appropriate for this group. But I'll pause there and feel free to jump in if you've got any thoughts or feedback on these issue areas.
Eric, if I may, this is Roman. Thank you so much for compiling this and making it very, very accessible. If possible, I would like to tweak the title that says promote energy equity and environmental justice into promote energy and environmental justice. It's just energy justice is a much better defined term than energy equity. That's all.
And I'll be making changes as we go through, so you should see it reflected on our screen. Thank you very much, Roman. I appreciate the thoughtful comment. Is there anyone in the group who would object to that? I think that's a very reasonable change. Any thoughts on the change or other changes that you'd like to see?
This is Douglas Chester. You have a category, the first one, rate design, and it includes item number 2, which is a study of potential benefits and costs of structural changes in UP electric power sector. That really is not a matter of rate design. And it's sort of burying the lead to put it under that rate design heading. So I would like to lift it out in some fashion, or we need to really rename the category, but I don't have any recommendation for that.
How about I'll make a recommendation here, Douglas. Thank you for your comment. Is it regulatory and rate design options? Does that better get at it? If we're talking sort of broader regulatory options and rate designs, or do we want to just call it regulatory options?
Structural change in the power sector, things like, mergers or combinations of utilities and so on, aren't entirely a regulatory matter. So I don't think that title quite works. Many of these utilities are unregulated.
Does it fit into planning, Douglas?
It could.
So if we move the recommended action number 2 into the planning bucket, do we alleviate the concerns we have with the title for enhanced rate design options?
Yes.
Great. Any other thoughts on the movement of studying potential benefits? That's an easy enough change to reflect. Okay, I will make a note of that, and we'll change that so we can avoid changing the header, but we will move that into the planning bucket. Other thoughts, changes, objections here? Great. I'm gonna, if there are other comments that come up as we go throughout the meeting, feel free. These are gonna be put up before you at multiple points in this discussion. And so don't wanna sort of spend time as a wheel are churning. So, but also feel free to just jump in if it comes up, or as we're going through the prioritization exercise, if there's things that spark your thinking. So I'll leave these for now, and you'll see them throughout. Again, even if you have comments that come sort of between now and our next meeting, feel free to email me with track changes, and I'll make sure that they're reflected and brought before the group. So I'm going to continue to move down. So from the next step here was to refine, and I'm going to switch my screens real quick just so you can see the general changes that happened from this meeting to from the first meeting in December to this meeting today. So what we ended up with was, I took all of our recommendations here and put them in as is, and started to, realize that we had, 105 and 19 to 20 different recommendations in separate categories. So if there are things that you feel like maybe have gotten dropped that want to be reflected, I've captured them so we can come back and we can pull them out. But I've got a color coding system here that I can share if the group is interested, that shows, where I moved things, the choices that we made around streamlining things. I want to call attention to, we did have a few recommendations in the heating category that reference propane. And because we had a dedicated phase 1 process that focused solely on propane, I made the decision that these either if these weren't reflected in phase 1, we need to sort of make sure that those changes are remedied. But I think largely these are things that we've covered earlier in the process. So chose to remove those for the sake of this phase 2 report. But so if there are any places where you want to come back to an idea or a theme that may not be represented in this list, let me know and we can come back to this this document, which captures sort of the changes that were made throughout. So I want to pause there and see if there's any questions as folks have had the chance to review the revised list of recommended actions. If you're missing something that you feel like was reflected in the conversation, so I can pull it into the Word document that we've shared and make sure that it's available for us as we go to prioritization.
We got a couple hands up, Eric.
Great. I can't see the hands up with my screen, so feel free to just pop in and I will go back to the Word document and start to make changes.
This is Jen Hill. I just have a simple question. Have you shared that big Excel sheet with us to understand the total universe of ideas? I think that might be helpful to just have that from all the different folks' ideas.
Great, Jen, I will send that right now, or actually I'll send it to Kimber and make sure that she can send it over. So that you can pull that up. I believe, Kimber, maybe you have this already. I'm not sure if I shared it with the group last week with the.
I do. I can send it. I can forward it.
Great. So Jen, that should hit your inbox shortly, and so feel free to reference that. Other hands up.
Douglas has his hand up.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I tried to take it down, but didn't succeed. That was from my earlier question.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
I gotcha. David Camps? Oh, he's disappeared too.
Yeah, I just dropped my hand there too. Policy, I'm just wondering, I've been reading a lot about other states, how they've approached this thing. And I'm coming from the premise that there's some immediate issues with pricing and other issues with the UP that are a little bit unique to the UP. But the smart grid would solve a lot of those problems as a second, more advanced stage and more, as we may implement that. So smart grid for the long-term issues. The immediate issues right now, and what I'm seeing in these other states is policy has driven deployment of new technologies and solutions, and I'm just thinking we might be a little weak on a policy step on here. Or would that go in this list as far as promoting smart grid policies? Pilot programs and demonstration projects type stuff. I'm just wondering if we need to get some policy issues up here, because that's where it seems to start.
Great, and thank you, Dave. So I'm going to bring everyone's attention to the category promote coordinated planning for UP energy providers. I think this is probably this is sort of the broader bucket where a lot of these planning and policy type recommendations landed. And so if you go to 9 and 10, that's where I think that those are most captured. But let me know if there's other thoughts around how do we can either add to this, or we can, if they're not captured, create a new one. I think the goal for today though is generally not to have more recommendations. We're trying to really amplify our impact by sifting through and distilling down the recommendations that we do have. So thoughts on if 9 or 10 are starting to get at that, or if there's language we can add before we create a separate recommended action.
Okay, thank you.
And on number 10, can I just confirm that RD&D is research, development, and deployment?
That is my understanding.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Are there other comments? Because if not, I would like to, I think these are the kind of topic or kind of conversation that'll come up as we move to the prioritization. So if there's not any sort of glaring omissions or things that are striking with this document that was shared with you, I will turn it back to Julie, and we're going to go through prioritization exercise, and we'll pull up a separate screen and share with you the voting process for how to sift through some of these and make sure we've got the priorities emphasized.
Right. Okay. So we're going to have some fun here with our facilitation, online facilitation tool, and Eric's going to help you with that. But just to set up what we're going to be doing next, both Eric and I have alluded to the fact that there are a lot of recommended actions, ideas that have been generated by this group, around 100 of those. And, in talking with Director Clark, just feeling like it's better to have less to increase the impact. So, if our target audience sees just, a lot of recommendations, it just might not have as much of an impact as where if we can really narrow down to those that are most important, we can spend time on those. To add more detail to them, to add, who's responsible for this, what exactly needs to happen, and really come up with a smaller set of high impact recommendations. And so that's the exercise that we're going to go through today. And Eric's going to talk you through the mechanics of that. It's a kind of a voting process. I wish we could all be in person and get to move around and do the things that we like to do when we do prioritization. But in this world, we'll use our technology. So, just pausing first, making sure everybody is on board with, making sure that we have a smaller set, less than 100 recommendations that we can then spend time on to add more detail. We didn't think it made sense to add detail and then prioritize. So we're prioritizing first. We'll of course make sure that any questions of clarity that you have, you can ask those to make sure you understand what the idea is before voting. But just pausing there to see if there's any questions about what we're planning to do, and then I'll turn it over to Eric to get into the details of the how that we're going to do it. And I will say too that we'll go through this exercise, but you will have an opportunity, if something didn't make the cut, to be able to voice that you strongly feel like it should. So this isn't a black and white exercise where if it doesn't make the cut, it's out. It's just a simple way to get consensus around those things that are most important among the whole group.
Yeah, and I'm just going to reinforce Julie's comment. This is a wonderful list. We just all know that we get more done when we have really prioritized what are our biggest rocks to move, so to speak. So appreciate everybody thinking about how do we together collectively narrow it, and we won't lose it, right? So the materials, we'll be able to list additional other steps, for example, but we want to prioritize recommendations.
Great, thank you, Lisa and Julie. Julie is going to pull up the Miro board like you've seen before, and this time it's going to be, we're going to go through issue area by issue area. And folks, Kimber emailed the link, and I've dropped it in the chat. So if you are on your computer, please pull up that link, and I'm going to open voting sessions for each grouping. So you will have, each task force member will have a dedicated number of votes. Based on the number of overall recommendations within each group. And so I will be creating a separate voting session, and I'll let you know when that starts. If you are on the phone or you're having trouble accessing the document, speak now, and we can, once we're through with the online voting, we'll have a chance to verbally vote, and we can record those responses. So I want to pause there and give everyone a moment to pull up the link and make sure that they see what it looks like, because I'm going to actually open the first session with a long window so that people can, if you're in, you can start voting. So if you,
I know Chris Bowman's on the phone, and I guess I'll go back and look and see if I can figure out who else is on the phone, but let's just make sure Chris is able to give us his input.
Okay. Anyone else that would like to be called on when we do voice voting? Okay, just speak up if you do need that, and we'll go through. So folks, the screen that Julie's sharing now is our first bucket of recommendations. I've moved I've moved the second recommendation. That was Douglas's suggestion, so that'll show up in a later round. So if you're in here, you should be able to now. There's a voting open, and you can click on the sticky note to register your vote. And I've set about 5 minutes for this, but I'm gonna wait till folks have wait till I see nodding heads about the voting, and we can adjust the time as we need to. So everyone, let me know if you're able to get in and start voting.
And if you have questions of clarity for the stickies, you can ask that at this time too, before voting.
This is Douglas. What's the number of votes for this category?
So this category, everyone has 3 votes.
Thanks.
I'm on a Mac and I am everything is teeny tiny. Is there?
Yes, you should. If you do zoom in, so I don't know if you've got like a click wheel or something to that effect with your mouse that you can zoom in. There should be a lot of individual ability to change your screen perspective within the design.
It's not scaling.
You have a touch screen, Jen?
No. Well, I guess I could put it on my iPad. All I have is iPad and Mac. Or I try to figure out how to get on my husband's computer.
Jen, if you're able to maybe chat your top 3, and I'll record those votes for you, and unless we can figure out the iPad solution, because I'm not entirely sure the full crossover between the platforms.
Thanks a lot, Steve Jobs.
So we've got just 2 minutes left. Are folks able to record their votes generally? If you can give me a thumbs up either in the video or in the chat.
I think this is user error, but I am not. I can see them, but I can't vote. And I think it may have been that I clicked out of the voting.
Okay.
So can I chat you?
Yeah, chat me yours, and I'll add them to the columns.
So Eric, I'm in the program, but I'm not sure what do you have to do to click on something to be able to vote?
So if you're in the program, you should see the five sticky notes that are put up, and there's a little plus button that would allow you to click, and then you can register your vote.
Eric, I'm on my iPhone with these. I can't see the plus button. Is there another alternative?
I'm not sure with the full mobile. So will you chat me yours, and we'll figure out this process. Maybe we've got to on the fly do some voice voting.
Yeah, and even if we can capture, a few people through the Miro and then a few through voice, like that'll work too. So if people need to voice vote or chat vote, that'll work too.
Yeah, this is Jim Kuchever. I also cannot seem to get the plus button operative so that I can click. So I may have to chat these as well.
All right.
Same for Tanya Sweenor. I can't click the button either.
Okay, I've got a list started of folks that have said they need to vote. So I've seen Paul Rogers voted in the chat. And we'll try this maybe with the next round, and then we can regroup if we continue to have those problems. The round's going to close here in just a minute. You'll still be able to see what's on the screen, but the voting will be recorded.
Is anyone else being required to create an account on Miro? Is that just me?
So Tanya, I did, but then I backed out and went back in and it was okay.
Okay.
So I just closed Miro and then I reopened it from Eric's link and it was all right.
All right, let me try that.
But
If
yeah,
we need another minute or two, Eric, that would be
Yes,
awesome.
I'm going to reopen this.
If you download the app, are you able to vote, or do you not want to download the app?
I did.
that would likely give you more functionality if you're struggling on the web browser.
Okay.
Eric, Dave Camps here. I've got, we can vote right on your screen, right on the presentation here. And I see Julie is moving things, or somebody moving things around on the email that was sent to us to put things in categories. But we can vote on either one of those, right?
Oh, fuck.
I think you have to be logged in on your own and be able to click the voting session to be able to vote.
Okay, I'm gonna click on 4. That should work then. But I did already on your screen, the screen you're sharing.
Yeah, you have to be logged in through the link because it won't record votes through the screen share on Teams. Sorry, I'm opening the session again.
Eric, this is Douglas Chester. Do you have the ability to tell who has voted through the online application?
Let me see. I think I have to go back and close out the voting to see that. So give me 1 second to see. I don't want to close out if people are starting to vote.
Right. The reason I'm asking is that my browser crashed while I was voting, and so I also put my votes into the chat. I didn't want you to double count.
Okay.
So.
I'm going to respond to Jen Hill's question and say, yes, we're doing the green stickies design.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
And seeing the number of people that are chatting me their responses, we might just go with a voice vote as we go through the next rounds, just because it seems like we're having more technical difficulties for roughly half of the participants. So sorry, please bear with us. This is a relatively new tool for a process in a virtual world.
Well, and Eric, if it helps you that half of us are able to do it that way, then at least we don't have to call through everybody. I see a question from Chris too, that he's saying, what if he doesn't want to vote? If you don't want to vote, you don't have to vote. So the intent is to try to narrow down the priorities. It's not that it's going to say, you know, Liesl voted for 1, 4, and 6, right? So that we're not capturing it for that reason. We're just attempting to narrow down what's in front of us. And so you're totally welcome to abstain. Or if you only think one thing's a priority, you can vote for just one, especially as we get to future lists that are longer.
Can I throw out too, this is time, like I'm not 100% sure what restructure rate making process means. So on some of these, I get me, but we're just trying to go with gut of how the items seem to address issues, but I know that there are a couple, having looked at the document, that I don't know that I 100% understand the recommendation. So I don't know how you want to deal with that.
Well, and Tanya, let me tell you, we deliberated about this a bit and we were struggling because on one hand, you want to have it fleshed out so you know what you're recommending, which direction we're going. On the other hand, you can't spend too much time fleshing out 50 recommendations. And so we were struggling with like, how do we kind of make sure that we're continuing to move the process forward in a way that's going to get us efficiently to our end goal and have enough information that we're, comfortable with how it's moving forward. So, we certainly can talk about it, particularly for people that raised that issue in our last conversation to give perspective on what they think it means. But I think that's a really good point. There are some fairly complicated recommendations, and I want to make sure, again, that people feel comfortable with the direction the task force is going. And again, I'm hoping that this ends up being everyone generally feels good about, what the steps are. It's not a matter of, detailed wordsmithing or concerns about some of the recommendations. If you recall, what we did with phase 1 was we ended up with a couple of sentences describing what the recommendation was, and kind of a header for an issue area. So there might be a header for enhancing rate design options to promote affordability, and then a couple of sentences to describe the recommendation. So I'll stop there. Hopefully that's a little helpful.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, I see all of the recommendation or the votes coming in through the chat now, so I'm recording those because it looks like only 2 or 3 folks possibly were able to vote through the online thing. So I think we're going to have to regroup pretty quickly, and I'm going to tabulate these votes. So if there are, okay, now I'm getting delete things. Give me 1 second while I go through the chat and I start to record these. If you haven't yet recorded yours in the chat, please do so now, and I'll reflect them into the document.
But if we were able to vote, that's fine.
Lisa, I only see, looks like 2 people who actually voted through the online. So if you think you voted online, I would say put them in the chat for now too, until I clarify what votes were actually recorded, because it doesn't show me who voted.
Okay.
All right, well, I'm still tabulating these votes. I'm going to pull these off the shared screen, and we're going to put up the next round, and we're going to have people, we're going to try one more version of this using the tool before we move to just an all chat vote. So Julie's I'm going to put up the next round of recommendations, and we're going to ask people, instead of using the voting tool, which seemed like it caused problems, we're going to do actually traditional dot voting, but you're going to have digital dots. And so you'll see, I'll create those for you. So folks that are able to log in, we're going to have you move your physical dots just like you would. So playing nicely with your neighbors, no moving anyone else's dots. And please use the number of dots that you actually are allocated. So first off, let's put this up. we've got the second round of recommendations in support renewable energy development. Each member is going to get 4 votes for this round. The votes are allocated based on the number of recommended actions within a round. So you'll see as I'm moving these over, I'm going to put in the dots for you to use. So feel free to start grabbing your dots if you're logged in through the tool. And I will also continue to replenish this grouping as we go. But if you're able to start voting through round one, or the second round of recommendations, and I'm going to continue to tabulate off screen the next version. So if you could just take your dot, and we'll move these, we'll spread these out a little bit so you can group them. You can group them next to it, and all it takes is simply a drag and drop it as close as possible to the other to the recommendation, so that we can appropriately categorize them.
And it's 4 dots
4 dots per person.
on our system here. We know you will abide by for sure.
I'm sorry, Eric. Every time I try to move a dot, I'm just moving the whole thing around. What am I doing wrong?
Yeah, me too. I was hoping to figure it out, but feels like I can't move a dot.
Oh, there goes somebody.
Yeah, this is Jim. Same with me.
Who figured it out?
Same here, Tony.
Dot.
I did, but I do have a capacitive screen on my computer, so that's the only way I was able to move anything. So I'm going to use this helpful tool that Apple doesn't seem to offer that often.
Oh, I figured it out. I don't know how.
Pick something on this side. I know they have like the pointer or the grabber.
I think I picked like color.
Yeah, this is Jim. Mine is working now as well.
I bet Eric hooked us up. I bet I didn't figure it out. I bet Eric.
Don't worry, I'm just scrambling in the background, Lisa, trying to make this tool work on the fly.
It's really cool. We're so excited to be your guinea pigs because this is going to be seamless later. It's fantastic.
Speak for yourself.
So this is Douglas. I have not succeeded in moving dots. So if anybody knows the trick.
Just try clicking the arrow on the tools on the left side and then selecting.
Yep.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, that's great.
It's cool. I can see Tanya's little face moving around on my screen.
We only got 4 dots to move, right?
4.
Yes, 4 dots, please. And 4 of your own dots. I hope I don't have to make that clear.
Oh, I don't know which dots I use now. This is so complicated. It's really not, I know.
Oh, I have a question I should know the answer to. Can we put more than 1 dot on a priority? So what if I do 4 dots, but I put them all on one thing?
I say that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's okay too.
Yeah.
Whew.
I am not able to do anything still. I'm gonna vote in the chat, I guess.
I think that for
I see no toolbar option in Mac. All I can do is pull up chat. Let's see.
I'm just gonna throw out, I like the dots. It's fun watching everyone's dots moving around.
Eric, did you see that Paul has 4 dots in the chat?
Yep, I'm starting to put those in off screen. So
Okay, great. All right, so it looks like most everyone has stopped moving their mouse around, so I can start to grab in these other ones. So Jeff, Mike, and Jen, I see votes for you. Are there other? It looks like Tony, Paul, Jeff, Mike, and Jen. Anyone else need to record their vote? Tanya Sweener just.
Tanya just came in. Great. All right. So I'm going to pull these off to the side again and finish tabulating the votes, and we'll move on to the next round, and then we'll come back and we'll have everything tabulated. Does that work?
Sounds good.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
As long as it's not a lightning round.
All right. Great. So I'm going to replenish the dots. So this next one is a smaller category. So provide support to local communities. So just 2 votes per person this time. I'm going to move the categories in, give them some space. And I'll start. Can folks see the dots if I leave them off of the screen? Can you grab them from the side, or do I need to have them in the frame here?
No, I don't think you have to have them in the frame.
All right, then I won't do that because that just crowds it up. So feel free to just start grabbing dots. There's no color coordination here, so don't be worried about that. And I will be sure to move the other categories further away so that there's not confusion. And thank you everyone for your patience bearing with us as we figure out how to get these votes.
Only 2 dots this time.
2 dots, please.
2 votes. Okay. And Eric, just so you know, we're losing a couple of task force members at 10, just FYI. So folks, don't feel bad about what you need to do. Thanks for letting us know.
All right, this is Jim. Without dots shown on the screen, where can I grab them? I cannot find them to grab.
You may have to zoom out.
Let me look.
More dots in there for you. Put more dots in for you if you need them on the screen.
Yeah, I've got them. Thanks.
You know, it just occurred to me too, Eric, while you're doing that, I'm just going to read this for people that might be only listening to us. So we're on our third category, which is provide support to local communities. And the 4 recommendations that are in front of us are: 1, provide support for public energy literacy education, including renewable energy potential. Number 2, facilitate coordination on energy issues among local governments. Number 3, support local officials and communities with energy planning. And number 4, provide education assistance to local units for energy project zoning and siting. So for those of you that might be following along by phone, just so you're aware of what we're doing. And we'll keep the task force members are voting here. So just to be clear, we've got task force members voting.
I'm putting in the last votes in the chat. Looks like I've got Paul, Jeff, Tanya, Tony, Jen, and Mike. All right, it looks like most everyone has stopped moving their mouse and I've stopped seeing chats come in. So are there any other folks that still need to vote on the provide support to local communities? All right, hearing none, I'm gonna grab these off to the side and move on to our next category. And Lisa, I thank you for reading that last group. We'll do that as we go through now that I'm caught up on each of these groups. So we're moving into.
I can read them for you if you want to consolidate dots. I don't mind.
I'm caught up now, so I do appreciate it. Thank you. So the next issue area is going to be lean into economic development opportunities. And within here, we've got looks like 9 different recommended actions. So in this case, we're going to ask people to limit their voting to 4, and we'll spread these out for you. So starting with number 1, prioritize and incentivize the use of brownfields or post-industrial sites, marginal lands for energy infrastructure. Number 2, determine opportunities to connect broadband infrastructure planning with electrification planning. 3, expand access and adoption of broadband services. 4, expand access to natural gas service. 5, promote an advanced energy supply chain and workforce. 6, provide support training for workers through career and technical education, unions, community colleges, and home builders to support clean energy industry. 7, identify potential for clean energy jobs in the UP. 8, increase contractor knowledge of energy efficiency financing and new technologies. 9, establish UP-focused energy efficiency and electrification workforce and business development program. I'm starting to see votes come in through the chat, so thank you for that. That works now that we're caught up.
All right, task force members should be voting, please.
Anyone who hasn't voted in the chat or on the screen yet, please do so, and then we'll continue to move through. We're starting to get. I think looks like we're slowing down on the number of votes coming through. All right, I'm gonna grab these then, unless there's any other votes. Speak now. Okay. Coming into the next category is expand opportunities for energy waste reduction. This is our largest category, so you'll get 5 votes per person. I'm going to put these up here and try and make them as big as possible while still giving ourselves space in here. And I will create new votes or new dots right now. All right. Reading through these again while you're voting. Increase energy efficiency funding to UP organizations. 2, continue and increase utility energy efficiency programs beyond the 2021 sunset for municipalities and cooperatives. 3, allow beneficial electrification through fuel switching, replacing propane and natural gas. 4, develop a geographically detailed analysis of heat pump feasibility in the UP. 5, ensure adequate financial resources for the weatherization assistance program. 6, increase low-income residents and renters energy efficiency access. 7, study the potential and plan for load growth from electrification. Eight, focus on net total decrease in customer utility bills. 9, promote adoption of utility on-bill financing / repayment programs for deep energy retrofits. 10, conduct a study to identify potential for renewable energy, energy efficiency, and electrification. 11, support opportunities for efficient buildings with integrated energy systems. Implement energy efficiency program for propane customers. Sorry, that's 12. 12 is implement energy efficiency program for propane customers. 13, establish pilot projects to replace electric resistance heating with heat pumps. And Jeff, just to clarify, your last vote that you just put in is for this round.
Eric, I'm not sure if Jeff is a task force member.
Thank you, Liesel.
So let's tabulate task force member votes.
Yeah, no, as I'm looking through the names, I'm recognizing most of them. Jeff, I am not. So folks, again, this is for task force members only. If you do have public comments, we'll have time for those. All right, we'll give it another minute or two. Anyone else need to vote through the chat? Any task force members need to vote through the chat still? Thank you, Jen Hill, Mike Prusi, Tony Ratasky, Chris Bowman. All right, seeing slowing movement here, I'm going to grab these and move them. We've just got a few categories left, so appreciate everyone working through these with us. All right, next category is promote coordinated planning for UP energy providers. We'll have 4 votes for this category. I'm going to put these on and just give me 1 second while I get them spread out here and create some new dots. All right. So again, 4 votes per category here. I will continue to create new dots for you. All right, for those, I'll read through them again. Here we've got improve long-term electricity planning in the Upper Peninsula through enhanced coordination among providers. 2, assess the potential for an impact of reducing the number of UP electric utilities. 3, develop a study of optimum transmission and distribution resource architecture in the UP. 4, assess opportunities for energy solutions such as non-wires alternatives, distributed energy resources, storage, microgrids, and smart controls, etc. 5, further define security, reliability, and environmental soundness goals for UP utilities. 6, establish public information and communications efforts to engage UP residents in energy planning. 7, identify transmission system gaps and remedies, e.g. better connections to Wisconsin and the Lower Peninsula. 8, prioritize renewable DER, distributed energy resources, to serve local loads through streamlining permitting and siting processes. 9, evaluate opportunities for grid modernization to improve reliability and enable deployment of advanced energy solutions. 10, establish practices for leveraging innovative practices from other states, e.g. pilots, research, development, and deployment, etc. And 11, this was moved from the earlier category rate design. So this will be study potential benefits and costs of structural changes in the UP electric power sector that will reduce energy costs. Look like they're getting really comfortable with the voting, so I appreciate that. This is moving pretty quickly now. I'm going to, if there's anyone else who hasn't voted yet, please do so. If not, I will record the last 2 votes from Tony and Roger that I received in the chat and move this to the side just for the sake of time so that we're moving along. All right. two more categories. These ones are relatively small, so I anticipate we'll be able to get through them. So the next category, 2 votes per member. Promote energy equity and environmental justice. And the change here wasn't reflected in this here, but we're going to do just energy and environmental justice. You've got 4 or 5 recommended action in here, so only 2 votes per person. So we should be able to move relatively quickly. Number 1, recommend utilities set net zero emissions goals for 2050. 2, study the most efficient implementation of My Healthy Climate for UP. 3, establish processes for addressing issues in energy inequality in public policy. 4, determine ways to reduce equalized costs of UP electric utilities. 5, allow Michigan Energy Assistance Program funding to be used for propane pre-buy. And again, you've got 2 votes in this category, so I would encourage and only members please vote. All right, great. We've got the last votes coming in the chat. So I'm going to move these over and reflect these in the chat. And then just one last category. And again, thanks everyone for your patience and willingness to work on the fly with us. So the last category, just 1 vote per member. And this is the category that talks about deploying advanced mobility and electric vehicle infrastructure. Just 2 recommended actions in this category. So 1 vote per member. Number 1, promote deployment of high-speed charging along major roadways. And 2, expand EV charging infrastructure throughout the UP, including fast charging.
Eric, I'm not sure I understand the difference between these, so I just voted right between them.
Okay, I appreciate that. And actually, as I was reading them, I think the first one was the highways and major infrastructure. So the way I've differentiated is maybe sort of a broader, highway system. That was one recommendation. The other one is other EV infrastructure, maybe at a like a non-state or federal roadway perspective. But these might just merge into one for thanks and for that comment and understanding.
Eric, I look at it like we're promoting high-speed charging along major roadways, but number 2 says expand. My question would be who expands, and and that goes back to Douglas's a few months ago that talked about the chicken and the egg scenario. So when it says expand, I want to know who expands before I support that.
Great, and I think that's the exact that'll be the nature of our discussion at our next meeting. So before that meeting, we'll take the prioritized recommendations and we'll walk through this, and we'll put the exact who that we think is responsible for this and get the reactions to and what those groups are responsible for doing. So that's, I think, looking forward exactly what we'll do with some of these some of the priority recommendations. So it looks like the voting has stopped and I've got what I need in the chat to finish up here. So if there's anything else from the group, I think, Julie, we can stop sharing and turn it over back to Liesl for next steps on the agenda.
All right, I'm getting my head back around what our next steps are. Okay, so as Eric's compiling and we are putting that response together, I want to say, first of all, just a big thank you to everybody for participating. I know that we had people that were doing double duty this morning too. And so that is very much appreciated as we're working towards narrowing things down. So as we move forward, we're going to take the feedback from today And as I mentioned kind of at the outset, work to flesh out more around the recommendations that have your support from a priority perspective. So again, none of this is final. All of this will come back in front of you. But working to meet that need that Tanya was pointing out too, of additional information in order to understand what is it that we're really talking about in this recommendation. So the next conversation that we have, we can talk a bit more about that work. We're also interested, if there is interest in people who want to spend more time digging into recommendations and kind of fleshing out the language that's there. Just know that you can raise your virtual hand or your physical hand and just let us know that you want to put a little bit more into that, and we can do that between here and our next meeting. So I guess that takes us forward. Actually, before I kind of work through what's standing in front of us, I'm going to just take a break and see if there are comments, thoughts from the discussion and the consolidation of recommendations that we just did, if there's any kind of overarching thoughts from folks. Yeah, I see Tanya and I saw Jen's hand. So Tanya did the virtual hand. We'll go Tanya first.
I just want to say how helpful I thought that organization was from where we started last time to just begin really framing, in my mind at least, what those components are. And so I just wanted to share that PSC did a great job taking a massive amount of stuff and trying to create some structure out of it.
Yeah, I will totally echo that, Tanya. Very much appreciative of the efforts over these last 2 meetings to help us figure out what's in all of our heads and what's been in through, but what's come up in the discussions. All right, Jen, then Douglas is on deck.
I agree that this sifted through a lot of information. The question of cross-cutting is still really important. And I'm wondering how we can bring some of that as we come to a final set of recommendations. I think it's important to tie some of these really clearly back to the goals. I think it's particularly communicating with the public about, again, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but there's been some concern with the propane, how we just had this list and we don't actually attach it to what it's actually achieving. And it doesn't necessarily feel like a plan. It just feels like a list. And so if there's a way in future meetings or some draft language that we could have to discuss about how this is an overall, there's an overall direction here towards a more secure foundation for the UP's energy future.
Okay, appreciate that, Jen. And I hear Jen volunteering to support drafting the cross-cutting goals and the headers for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen. All right, Douglas?
I would just note that in many of the categories, we had pretty clear-cut results. In a couple of them, the voting results were relatively even, not, completely. And I want to pose a question really to the public sector consultants team, whether you think that there was sufficient clarity in all of the categories, or whether you need further discussion from us to sort out 1 or 2 of them.
Yeah, and I can field that. Thank you, Douglas. So I'm still tabulating. I'm going through and counting. I think the first thing is there's a few clear-cut winners, I think, from each grouping. And so obviously those will represent some of the priority actions that we spend time on. As far as places where we have maybe less consensus, so I'll take the coordinating planning bucket. Only out of 11, all but 1 received votes, and there's a good grouping sort of in the 4 to 5 vote range. So it'll be I think there'll be a determination process that we want to get to. We didn't sort of cap the number of recommendations we would be providing. And we didn't say that, we're going to exclude any that didn't receive a certain number of votes. So it'll be, we'll probably look at the distribution of the voting and make some determinations there, but you'll get a report out of what the votes were and what that process was, sort of in the same memo format. And we'll vet that with the Eagle, the team before we move forward with any cuts.
Thanks.
Again, I was struggling a little bit with how far to go into process before we had a consolidation conversation too. So let me just pause again. I will say one of the things that bubbled up for me in the course of this process is how important that public engagement component is. I saw that in many of the kind of high level recommendations, and then also in the buckets underneath. So anyway, I'll just pause a second too and see if there are any additional thoughts that folks want to bring up here. All right, so very helpful. So going forward, so we have a February meeting on February 24th. So now we have a few weeks until our next meeting, which is going to give us a little bit more room to consolidate those recommendations and get them into a format where we're able to have a final opportunity to review and really talk through those recommendations. And we'll work in that meeting to make sure that everyone feels comfortable with what's there. So that will give us an opportunity to dig into some of these issues that have been identified here, as well as we've been identifying all along. So we have a task force meeting on March 3rd on the calendar, as well as March 16th. It's our thinking right now, depending on how far we make it on the February 24th meeting and how much consensus there is, that we might be able to not hold one of those March meetings. Obviously, we're going to need some time to make sure that we are able to receive public input on the draft as well. And so we're working through how do those dates that we've got calendared right now support making sure that we have an opportunity for public input. And certainly, most first priority being making sure the task force has enough time to deliberate and feel comfortable with the recommendations. So now the team will be working on building the structure around what you all prioritize today so that you have something to react to when we talk in February, and we can really work to get those recommendations right. As has come up in our previous work, Jen's comment certainly about cohesiveness is important. And another piece of this is likely that having an executive summary in front of all of you would be helpful as well, so that you've got what the context or the kind of the umbrella component for what the recommendations will be as well. So we'll endeavor to have that piece in front of you in February to go with the early version of recommendations. So with that, I'm going to pause again and see if there are other comments from task force members on what we did today, what's in front of us, and the path forward.
This is Dave Camps. I checked out there for a bit, but I was able to vote. I don't know what happened, but Director Clark, you just suggested we have another session where we can, if we've got any problems with, we got a little bit of a free form where we can voice concerns and make sure our voices are heard. I think that was a good idea. So I'm looking forward to that, and I apologize for my technology issues here.
Yeah, no worries, Dave. It happens to all of us these days, that's for sure. Yes, so the next conversation on the 24th, we'll have materials in front of you that will consolidate what we've talked about today, and also take the recommendations one step further so that we can really have a discussion about if those reflect what the task force wants them to reflect. And I think I saw Roman's hand up.
Indeed. Well, first of all, thank you so much for public service consultants. That was a very productive exercise, and I'm now captivated by the dot moving imagery. I think I'm going to adopt it for all sorts of things. So thank you for that. I just, my comment is, when you are compiling the results of today's voting and discussion, I would encourage you, you're probably already thinking about it, just in terms of structuring, structure the priorities in the way that they are, reflected in terms of the general sort of recommendations that would be encompassing, if not cross-cutting, right? So, and also perhaps go back to the options or the suggestions that were sort of did not receive as many votes, because there were a number of them that were substantially similar. So, and they might be differ, by not too much. So, and also take those recommendations into account while formulating the final sort of a list. So, but again, thank you so much. It was very, very helpful.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, Roman. And what we've talked about is similar to the model that we used for phase one, where the recommendations have, the categories have sort of a header context, and then there's a couple of sentences around each recommendation, probably something similar. So I can see where some of the recommendations that maybe didn't make a priority today create good context for the header for that category, if that makes sense, even though they wouldn't necessarily be a priority recommendation. All right, other thoughts from task force members before we turn to public comment?
Does anybody feel rushed? Like we're moving a little fast here? This is the UP, this is our home. I want to make sure we're being thorough and we have enough time to do this. I feel a little bit rushed. I'm trying to figure out. And the other thing I'm trying to do is what is the vision of the answer? What are the issues that we had, that Director Clark had us go through last time? What are the problems in the UP? Price disparity, we went through a lot of that. And then what's the long-term solution? It's hard to make recommendations when I think we don't know the solution. We don't have an engineering solution. I come from an engineering background. This is a massive project to fix the UP's energy situation. I want to make sure we're not missing anything. So I'm feeling a little bit rushed.
So Dave, I'm going to give you similar feedback to a conversation that I had just a couple of weeks ago, which is that this task force is not solving the UP's energy problems. That is not what this task force is doing. This task force is receiving a lot of information. We've had 18 meetings now where we've had presentations and things to deliberate and to guide us as we think this through, to make recommendations. So we're not going to have a recommendation that, models all the electricity providers off of, what are residents, commercials, and industrials using as a combination. I mean, that's not going to be in the output of this task force, but this task force has, again, met 18 times and received a lot of input from experts as well as from the public about what the challenges are. So while we will not solve the problem, I do think that our work together will substantially move the effort forward. And I hope that as we're working with public sector to consolidate what we've heard, from the last few meetings, what we put in front of you now will be an opportunity for you to say, oh yeah, okay, I think we've captured it, or wow, this is not where I was going at all. So would love to engage with you between here and that February 24th meeting too. So if you're thinking there's a category in particular or a recommendation in particular, that you'd like to kind of think a little bit more about, we definitely would love to make it so that it's not like we're not talking between here and the February 24th meeting, but we're making really productive steps forward to get material in front of you on the 24th to kind of keep us moving forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's just I may be having a little problem with my engineering background. We get in to look at the problem and want to solve it, that kind of thing. But I understand. Thank you. And yeah, I look forward to that further discussion.
Man, I wish we could solve it all by February too. I'm with you.
All right. Thanks.
Michael Larson?
Yeah, I guess my follow-up question, it just plays off of Dave's just a little bit, maybe not so much, I don't know. Will we also kind of have, so we have a set of recommendations will we kind of be directing those recommendations to which particular entity may be solving said recommendation? So, are there some that, hey, this is, this goes to the MPSC, we'd recommend the MPSC, look at this. We'd recommend the executive branch look at this. We recommend individual, utilities or whatever the case is. So essentially a mechanism to study that recommendation. Is that something we'll discuss, or maybe public sector consultants can kind of think of like, all right, this is probably who's, where that mechanism for that recommendation would be. So I'm just, is that on us, or is public sector going to kind of take a little bit of a stab at, which entity may be looking in that recommendation?
Yeah, we'll take a stab at that. So that was something that we did in the last round too, was say, it's executive, legislative, or other type of action. So we'll try to give it a category again, but of course, needs to be, based on what the task force thinks is the right category.
Sure thing.
Thanks. So if you recall, we had a presentation from the Attorney General's office on, some legislation they were working on. So for example, that recommendation was legislative.
Yep. Thank you.
Yep. This is really helpful feedback. Other discussion points? All right. Just again, I want to echo what I just said. This does not mean we don't talk again until the 24th. This means that, we're working to pull together the progress today with the structure, so that when we get together on the 24th, we're continuing to move it all forward. Jen?
So I had a thought with the 6 weeks. I am getting questions about the status of propane from community members. So, we issued a set of recommendations. I think there's been some movement on some of those issues. And we have a lot to do with a big topic with the other energy systems, but could we have an update of where things are at the next meeting? And absolutely. So that where the status of I understand there's a plan for rail that's coming and sort of wherever else the other issues are at this time, it would be very helpful to continue as we continue to pull this all together.
Yes, we can definitely talk about phase 1 actions at the next meeting. That is a great suggestion. Other thoughts?
Yeah, one more here. Yeah, regarding Jen, that propane situation, I know you were sending some emails around where we are in better shape from a supply standpoint, but there seems to be a polar vortex starting to develop up in the Arctic, and nobody knows really how intense it will be, but I topped off my tank, and I talked to TV6 that in the event that this thing gets severe, we can advise people to top off their tanks, so that way as a mitigating action.
Thanks, Dave. Chris has said he's happy to talk a little propane too. Chris, do you want to chime in for a few minutes and just tell us what you're seeing as lay of the land right now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, you sound great.
Yeah, I was just, our industry is, quite diverse, and they've made a lot of changes on where they're getting their product, and we aren't seeing any shortages, and the inventories are high, and price is pretty fair. So, things are looking good.
Great, appreciate that, Chris.
Also, Chris, I looked into your renewable propane. Very interesting. We'll talk more about that offline.
Thank you. At least someone did.
Oh yeah, I looked into hydrogen too, and yeah, the related. Thanks for that, bringing that up though.
I did too, Chris, just for the record.
Thank you.
All right, good conversation. Okay, I think I'm gonna close this discussion component unless there's anybody else who's got anything they'd like to bring up from a task force perspective. All right, we're gonna go over to public comment a little bit early. Good job, team. I did not receive any emails of requests for public comment. So I'm going to first just see, Kimber, if you received anything through email or other means for public comment today.
We did receive one request from Melissa Davis.
Great. All right, Melissa Davis, if you're with us, we would love for you to unmute and let us know where you're calling from or dialing in from, and then we'll go ahead and give you 3 minutes to address the task force. Melissa, are you with us?
I'm here, thanks.
Great. Hey, Melissa.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Well,
I'm
it's
in
yours.
Hancock, and I want to start off again thanking the UP Energy Task Force for taking the deep dive into this issue, and I'm excited about what you might be able to recommend. Last month, I talked a little bit about our mission, our 501c3's mission for energy efficiency and renewable water and energy efficient technologies. And this morning, I wanted to start off by saying I was really happy to see that Michigan, Maine, and Finland are developing a partnership in developing our bioeconomy. And to let you know that we've also been working toward that goal. In fulfilling the energy literacy side of our mission, we hosted 2 events. In 2018, we organized the Business and Technology Energy Conference in Hancock. And then in 2019, we partnered with the City of Houghton for the City of Houghton Energy Series, and Eagle was one of our main sponsors. So I'll take this minute to thank you for that. At both events, we featured bioeconomy experts from the Tarvala Bioeconomy Center, and that's part of the Jyväskylä University of Applied Sciences in central Finland. So as an offshoot of that, our local smart zone started a Fin Zone. And the Fin Zone is established to open up business corridors between our area and Finland. And so it kind of fits right in with what you're talking about. So I just thought I'd bring it up because if any of the members of the task force are also in that lane, I bet Fin Zone would be delighted to offer their resources in any way. And I just wanted to get that on your radar. And thank you for your time.
Great. Thanks, Melissa. Appreciate the sharing on the Fin Zone. I think some of us saw a little bit of that long ago when we were up in Hancock. It feels like so many months ago now. Well, it really was a lot of months ago, but appreciate you reinforcing.
Good.
All right. Other folks who are interested in addressing the task force today. Kimber, Kimber, were there any others that came to you?
No, that was the only one that came through email.
All right. So if there are folks on the line that are interested in addressing the task force, you could raise your hand if that's an option for you, which I think is *6, if I remember correctly. Maybe that's unmuting. Or you can go ahead and just speak up. So we're in our public comment component of our task force meeting. So if anyone is interested in addressing the task force, now would be a great time to do that. All right, I'm not seeing any hands go up. I'll give it another minute to see if anyone is interested in speaking. All right, and while people might be considering speaking, I'm going to remind you that you can send comments to eagle-upenergy@michigan.gov. And we have a lot of materials at michigan.gov/UP Energy Task Force. Although my people keep telling me I'm not supposed to say /, I'm supposed to just say /, so I did it wrong. michigan.gov/UP Energy Task Force. All right, doesn't sound like we have any other public comment for today. So with that, I am glad to give everybody some time back and know that there's going to be, we're going to be like the ducks furiously paddling under the water between here and the February 24th meeting. So keep an eye on email, and we'll reach out to some of you that indicated individually, or if we've got additional clarifications around recommendations, if it was something that came from you, you might expect a contact between here and February, and we'll get materials in front of you to keep us all moving forward. So with that, I'm going to give you a little bit of time back. Thanks again to this fantastic team. Really appreciate the work of public sector to keep us moving forward. Appreciate all the folks at Eagle who keep us organized and on target, and mostly appreciate the additional time the task force team has been giving to this work. Again, this is our 18th meeting. It's really quite a compendium of work, and that will be clear in the final report for this phase as well. So thanks to all of you, and we'll talk soon. Stay warm.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.